Hello, everybody. It is my pleasure to return. Let's get into the new stuff. This one's coming from. Well, it comes from the heart, really. I guess that's where it's coming from. Here we go. This is just the intro, explaining everything. Escaping the fall of Guardia, then going back in time. Getting thrown in jail, getting let out of jail. With the message, she needs to find Fiona's shrine, which she does. Then you got old Frog there guarding Robo, and Robo's got a message. He's like, we gotta go to Gaia's navel. Luca basically programmed that into him trans-dimensionally. Then they go there, and they touch the record, which is like the save thing, and they start getting chased by the Mount Watchman, which is basically a version of Miguel that fate has kind of twisted again. Then Ayla comes and saves the day, and I imagine at this point you'll be doing like you're controlling two characters, and then there's a bunch of auto characters who are on your team, but you're not in charge of them. And so that sets up the dynamic where it'd be a single team with auto fighters. We'll get to more about that later. Then you're basically, at this point, you can do two things. It seems like we have to talk about more about that later. That's pretty complicated. All right, I'm just going to try to get into it now. So, in 700 AD, Dalton is like the man. But he was the man. He was the man in 620, and then he left that time. Let's see, this one might be good. This is from 700. Many citizens are driven faint by the corruptive power of the Mammon machine. So this is about like this is a good couple generations after Dalton's set up in 620, which is what this looks like. This actually is 620. It says 700. I mean, which it is, but this is what imagine this is what the peak of Dalton's multi-time empire that he set up in 620. This is what it would look like by the time you got to 700, which is where the Chrono Trigger time egg that Luca left in the basket at the end of time takes you to. And that's because of a Chrono Trigger is basically the complete harnessing of anti-annihilation energy. So it knows. It's like if the player is a force for anti-annihilation, which means I guess preserving life and just being good, I guess. Then the Chrono Trigger had the localized anti-annihilation energy, and that's why Nadia ended up in 700, because it's the only time where Nadia, Robo, Frog, and Isla would all be at the same time. So that answers why she ended up in 700. But anyway, you can alter 700, which will these three time zones are on like a they are sort of a mini game in themselves. They're a microcosm of the traditional Chrono adventure. So you run through the traditional style Chrono gameplay within this framework. If you change 700 for the better, then the corresponding two timelines will also be for the better. And you can sort of optimize this whole very simple timeline scheme before you head into 2300, before you head into the singularity there. And you could play through, say that you trick out this timeline and you defeat Dalton at Death's Peak in 2300. That would trigger an ending cinematic. Like it would basically be the end of that sort of sequence of events, and it automatically pushes you into a new game. So you have to go through it again. And you know that that can't be the whole thing because it was not fulfilling. So you push into the singularity, which I'm trying to find I have a very specific video I want to show here. Well, while I look for that, why don't you guys check this out? This is I realized that I'm always talking about arbiters, so I thought this would be a funny experiment. It's basically me talking about arbiters on a loop, but all chopped up and random.
So
Anyway,
who are the arbiters? How do the arbiters react to feeling this enmity? Arbiter-based parties, basically, if you want to split your party and travel into different places on the break, each party that goes needs to take an arbiter. Those are like the leaders. And so it makes sense that if they're arbiters, then the gameplay kind of ties into the story where they're inherently designed to kind of better the timeline and be a go between Lavos' influence and the planet, sort of maintain the balance. A game over only happens when all the arbiters are dead. Actually, that's not true. If all the arbiters die, wait. It is true. If all your arbiters die, then you're dead. What is an arbiter? There's a demi-human in Marbule that says anyone who touches the flame will become different. Does that necessarily mean that everyone who touches the flame is an arbiter? Not necessarily. A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle does not have to be a square. So are there other ways to become an arbiter? And
okay. Sorry, I forgot this had music. I'll just let this one play out. Okay, cool. So we're going to be talking about Serge today too. He is here's the video I wanted to show. So when you're at the end of time, boop, and you're tricking out this mini timeline, the Dalton corrupted timeline, then like I said, you could beat Dalton and Death Peak and get the ending cinematic, or you could go to the singularity that is in 2300. Glimpses of another world. Far in the distance, a singularity holds. What does it hold? The vision serpent awaits. Hold on, I want to see what it holds. I think it's... I remember what it holds. It holds the promise of a new world. You're going to go to the break. So, but first you have to beat the vision serpent, right? And so that's why it's helpful to pick up these guys who have, well, who are just natural badasses and who also have the Dreamstone weapons, because this, oh, that one doesn't have the text. Basically, the Vision Serpent is made of Dreamstone. So it's just helpful to have Dreamstone weapons. But like I said, total freedom, right? Say, for instance, you don't want to pick up Frog, Chrono, Serge, whatever. You don't care about that. You're speed running, or you just want to see what it would be like. You skip over those guys and go straight to the singularity. But you might be able to defeat the Vision Serpent because you went to grind a lot for... Sorry, I'm slow with the videos. You went to prehistory. You could have just done this. You could have just taken Robo, Nadia, and Isla and gone to prehistory. A vast dungeon filled with rocks, perfect for learning tech. So you can just level up your whole caveman squad and yourself and collect Dreamstone. And, you know, in this scenario, Chrono would not be there, but this just happens to be the gameplay footage that I have here. But hey, go pick up Chrono and then go to prehistory. I mean, it's all about grinding. This game is just about grind. You know, combat is the key to Chrono Trigger. That's what made it so great. Plus storyline. But in this one, combat is king. Let's look at the material that I have prepared. Oh yeah, so this one's from 1020. At the end of Chrono Cross, the demi-humans basically declared war on the humans, since they believe rightly that humans killed their god. The demi-humans worshipped the black dragon, and then Serge basically went in there and just cleaned them up. So, repercussions. Go to Viper. Go to Viper Manor. Access the underwater ruins from the sealed door in Viper Manor. You know, giving Radical Dreamers vibes. Throw the Radical Dreamers vibes in there. Why not? Viper Manor is a treasure trove of information about Elmedan history, but their records are still incomplete. For all the answers, you need to visit a place we all know, Chronopalasu. Okay, so, but you can also go downstairs to the underwater ruins. The ruined city of Inhasa, a megalithic cavern built to house a huge cache of dreamstone. This dreamstone may have been the gravitic anomaly referenced in Chrono Cross that drew the builders of Chronopolis to the area. And that is also talked about in The Dusk of Time. Like Luca and Gasper basically do a raid on this area, and you learn about how they fly up from the bottom of the island that Inhasa is on, originally called Maru Island. And that's a shout out to the fact that Chrono Trigger was originally going to be called Maru Island. That was the original project name, so that's why it's called Maru Island. And the gravitic anomaly is totally what all that dreamstone was, the gravitic anomaly. So after Maru Island sunk into the sea, it was there for a long time, and that's what drew the builders of Chronopolis, and that's also what was preventing Dalton from flying over the area during the beginning part of his reign. Also seen in The Dusk of Time. Okay, let's see what other new stuff we got. Okay, we're definitely gonna. Should we just finish up the Arbiter stuff? Okay. I'll go to the experimental zone.
So who are the Arbiters? How do the Arbiters react to feeling this enmity? Arbiter-based parties, basically if you want to split your party and travel into different places on the break, each party that goes needs to take an Arbiter. Those are like the leaders. And so it makes sense that if they're Arbiters, then the gameplay kind of ties into the story where they're inherently designed to kind of better the timeline and be a go-between between Lavos' influence and the planet, sort of maintain the balance. A game over only happens when all the Arbiters are dead. Actually, that's not true. If all the Arbiters die... Wait. It is true. If all your Arbiters die, then you're dead. What is an Arbiter? There's a demi-human in Marbule that says anyone who touches the flame will become different. Does that necessarily mean that everyone who touches the flame is an Arbiter? Not necessarily. A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle does not have to be a square. So are there other ways to become an Arbiter? And I swear, I'm not making this up, but I think I read one time the theory that Marl's existence outside of time might have given her Arbiter status. And I don't quite get that, but I like it. It's this part. Let's talk about who the Arbiters would be and why. Who is an Arbiter? How is Arbiter status achieved? If the Arbiter is simply one who has touched the flame, then surely Queen Zeal, Melchior... I don't know if we know that he's definitely ever touched the flame. Did he touch it? Did he touch it? The Gurus and likely others who touched the flame over time would have become an Arbiter. Could Arbiter status be achieved in some other way? For the purposes of this story, we are going to expand the definition of what it means to be an Arbiter a bit. Anyone who has existed for a time in the darkness beyond time, temporal void, and left it is considered an Arbiter. I can't remember where I heard this theorized, but I will look it up before making the final video. This can only mean that this is not the final video because I have not fact-checked myself on that. But I mean, I don't think I thought of that myself, so I like it, but I wish I thought of it. But at any rate, Marl is and she's in fact the default one that you get in the game. And that also explains why Atropos is an Arbiter too. Because remember it said, Atropos spent some time in the, it says Dead Sea, Darkness Beyond Time, but also it could be the Temporal Void. Because she disappeared into a dissolved timeline for a while. In Chrono Trigger, her systems were damaged beyond repair. After her fight with Robo, she expires and then is restored in the good ending. So she's an Arbiter, and that means that even though she's not playable, you get the game mechanic of having unlimited pendant with her, and also you never have to restart the game. Oh, that's reminded me to write down to get the list of Arbiters up here. So who else is an Arbiter? Who else would be an Arbiter in this case? I have a list here. I'm going to put them on the screen. First and foremost, who had so much experience with Lavos in original Chrono Trigger? I know who. Okay. Okay. That was pretty cool, man.
Oh, shoot. Okay. I messed up. I'll just commit to my mess up. Find Serge in Arnie. By the time the player meets him, he's been repeatedly brainwashed by the records of fate. Okay, so what is Serge's deal? He united the timelines, but he encountered the Dream Devourer, and there is a story plot point that we need to drive home, which is that basically anyone who encounters Time Devourer is totally brainwashed after that. Their memory is ripped clean. And so that's what happened to him. Why is Serge the assassin of time? In any timeline where he lives, Serge destroys fate. Despite her corruption. Oh yeah, this is one thing I was thinking about for one of the outlying questions is why does Serge survival mean that the world is going to end? Okay, it's very clear on this point. When he touches the frozen flame in 1006, he does the timeline is not yet destroyed. Okay, like the Dead Sea has not yet formed in his world. It's not until Kid saves his life in 1010 that the Dead Sea is formed, where his survival results in this is all Chrono Cross material. You know, his survival leads to the end of the world, is basically what they end up saying. And one of the questions remaining is why? Why would that happen? And one thing I was thinking about was maybe it's not him living that causes the timeline to be or the end of the world. Maybe it's what he does. And what if it's because in any timeline where Serge lives, he destroys fate? And despite her corruption, fate was the only possible possessor of the frozen flame in history ever that could truly negotiate salvation for the humans in the end. After all, Mother Brain's primary mission was to assist humanity, and fate was built on that architecture. So, in a weird twist of fate, it's like Serge destroying fate, even though fate sucked hardcore, it was the only thing that was eventually even gonna let the humans survive destruction by the hands of Lavos at all, because of the frozen flame. The frozen flame was there, and only fate was eventually going to save humanity. And so when Serge lives, why does that say Aeon older? Aeon older. Sorry, that is a glaring typo right in the middle. Aeon older, more mature Serge. That's not totally true. He'd be about the same age. Just a little bit older. But more hardened by the world, because even though El Nido fared pretty well because of Fate's protection during the New Day of Lavos in 900, and he's still like, Chrono is old, and Chrono in 1020, Chrono is very much battle hardened and like post-apocalyptic Chrono. And so Serge is kind of post-apocalyptic too, but El Nido was pretty safe during the the New Day of Lavos because of like its special status. After Serge unified the dimensions, he lost his memory as a result of encountering the Time Devourer. He is equipped with the Master Moon, excuse me. Troubled nights. Serge suffers nightmares of drowning at the hands of his loved ones. The party's arrival gives him a chance to explore the world and get to the bottom of his trauma. So if the player goes to 1020 and then goes to El Nido, as per Melchior's, like if you meet up with Melchior, then he can get you passage to El Nido, so you can go and collect elements for him. So if you go there and then you go to Arnie, then you can find Serge, who's a musician in Arnie, out there collecting Komodo scales, and that is where the game mechanic of these affinity gauges comes in. So in the courtroom, the courtroom scene in Chrono Trigger was totally based on like the invisible affinity gauge from all the actions that you did up until that point in the game. And we can capitalize on that, push that way forward in this one and have that kind of dynamic everywhere. For instance, like if you go and you collect Komodo scales with him, and not only do you learn about, since he's an arbiter, then you'll have your first two-party setup, and like you can basically learn the dynamics of navigating two parties and switching back and forth. Imagine you have like a Chrono Trigger party of 3 on one part of the map, and then you can press a button and just switch to the other one, and they kind of operate. You know what I'm saying? It would be totally badass. So you learn that dynamic while you collect Komodo scales, and then your affinity gauge with Serge rises while you do that. You guys basically become friends. And after a certain point, he just gets like invited into the tribe, and he's like, maybe an adventure would be a good way to get rid of these nightmares that I've been having and see the world a bit and figure it out. Because he's got a question, which is, where did he get the Master Moon? He's got a lot of questions about how his life ended up after he unified the dimensions. And so if you do a New Game Plus and start with Serge, then you collect Komodo scales to level up with Serge at an increased rate. So you can level up really fast with Serge by collecting Komodo scales. Very high experience items, I suppose. Kind of like tabs for experience. When the party catches up to him and Arnie, they'll get a stat boost as well. Another story example of how to mitigate the difficulty. If you game over your first run, then it gets a little bit easier. It gets a little bit easier. It gets a little bit easier. So Komodo scales are pretty much just experience tabs. You can, I don't know, eat them, give them to certain characters, and they'll gain levels. Speaking of levels, maybe now's a good time to talk about a vision I had for so imagine, like, in the 16-bit days, you had to assign like Fire 1, Fire 2, Flare. Okay, I'll just show this one that I got. I'll find the other one in a minute. Okay, so here you go. Here's some pre-magical tech. Whoops. So this is what it would be like if you cast Aura, Aura at level 10. This is what it looks like. But then if you're at level 30, it looks like this. You can cover more distance. It's a little bit stronger. Then if you're at level 40, it looks like this. And then if you're at level 99, you can cover vast areas. Vast. I've got other examples of this. I just got to find them. I found it. Magic animations match the level of the caster. As the character levels up, so does the power of their spell. This is just a thing I think would be really cool to slowly notice that your spell is growing. And so you actually gain like a love for just fire, just casting fire. There's no fire 2, there's no fire 3. You just cast fire. And it looks like more and more amazing the stronger you are. Boom.
釣り見てくるんだな。